This is a guided meditation. In this exercise, we will practice a method of noticing sticky thoughts that trap us in patterns of anxiety or depression and quickly getting unstuck through conscious contact with the present moment. We are often prone to needless and useless suffering because we tend to get caught up in thoughts that involve past mistakes, errors, and wrongdoing that we have done to others or others have done to us. Or we project into the future, often of the very worst case scenarios, and we emotionally and even physically react as if the impending catastrophe will become reality. When caught up in these patterns of thinking, thoughts can seem to race by, and this can feel very overwhelming. People will often say something to the effect of feeling as though they are spiraling, as in spiraling out of control and in a downward direction, like being tossed about and completely overpowered by large waves. In these moments, what we often lose sense of, even as we are reacting to thoughts of impending catastrophe, is the near universal fact that in the actual present moment, we are perfectly safe and completely secure. But if we develop the skill to be better able to remain in conscious contact with the present moment, tethered to the here and now, where we are safe and secure, we would stop being so prone to getting caught up and pulled into these scary thoughts that toss us about in emotional turbulence and turmoil. To show an example of this, last summer, I went to a theater to watch a movie titled Warfare, which is about a real-life combat scenario that occurred during the Iraq War. I am an infantry combat veteran with 2-year-long Iraq deployments. The movie was a very accurate depiction of a harrowing combat situation. It was not a typical Hollywood theatrical film, no overarching theme, no soundtrack. And really early on in the film, during the beginning of initial enemy contact, I could sense my body begin to respond to what was coming into my awareness through my sense of sight and sound. This is what is generally referred to as being triggered, in the sense that my nervous system began physiologically responding to environmental stimuli in a way to prepare for what it anticipated was about to happen, all based on actual past experience. It's the central nervous system just doing one of its important jobs, which is taking in data through sense organs and using that sensory information to anticipate and prepare for what it predicts is about to happen. This is based largely on past outcomes that occurred when similar data was detected. There is a saying that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Our bodies are conditioned in a way to take this saying to heart, or put more accurately, to our nervous system. This is all in the service of helping us stay alive, but it can also cause us distress and avoidance, where there is no need for it. While in the movie theater, I was sitting there while at an unconscious level, my nervous system was taking in this data from the environment, and I noticed my eyes reflexively began to dart horizontally, left and right, a phenomenon that is called hypervigilance. I also noticed my heart rate speed up and seemed to be beating much harder and faster than usual. I was able to notice this experience, and I even had a thought that this is probably a similar experience to what people call having a panic attack, or at least the very beginning of one. If I wasn't in a movie theater and aware of the fact that my central nervous system was taking in data and interpreting a direct threat to my life, I can imagine I would have been much more troubled by this change in experience. If I had experienced these symptoms while sitting at home or strolling down a grocery store aisle, my mind would have probably told me that I was having a heart attack and am about to die, which would understandably only increased the sense of distress, probably to the point of what people would call having a full-blown panic attack. So the mere ability to notice the experience of a response to not just sensory information, sights, sounds, smells, but also thoughts, have the affect of not totally eliminating, but certainly decreasing the magnitude of the distress. In contrast, the thoughts that we have about an inner experience, like the thought of dying from a heart attack, have the effect of greatly increasing the magnitude of the distress. I knew why I was reacting the way I was in that moment. I then told myself, I am not in Iraq right now. I am in a movie theater in Connecticut. Next, I practiced a technique that I have come to call conscious contact with the present moment. After noticing a reaction that does not match the current environment, which is safe and secure, the most helpful thing to do is then immediately shift the spotlight of attention directly onto the safe and secure environment. What I did in the theater was shift the focus of my attention onto the skin of my forearms that were in contact with the cheap fake leather armrests, and just really notice the feeling, and then more generally on the sensation of the icy cold air. You know how these theaters really crank the AC. And in doing this, it was signaling to my brain's limbic system to be aware that I was not being threatened in any way in that moment, that I was perfectly safe. I then continued to notice as my psychological and physiological experience became completely restored to a calm state. I thanked my mind for doing its job to keep me alive, and I also felt a sense of gratitude for having survived an ordeal all those years ago. And to me, that kind of sums up what the method of this exercise is pointing to. But it really is profound if you can glimpse this part of the mind that's always okay. It's always present and available to us, but it's often beyond our normal sense of the thinking self. So to begin, just kind of settle into your seat and see if you can consciously release any tension in your body, relaxing your shoulders and gently pushing your feet into the ground. Now take a long and deep breath. And then relax. It can help to have a straight spine so you're somewhat alert. And it always helps to consciously set down any mental baggage from the day. In other words, you might be thinking about other things that happened or things you have to do, but see if you can make an intention that you're going to put those aside for now. You can take a couple of breaths just to calm down the nervous system. It helps to extend the exhale and breathe into your belly. And unlike most meditations, for this one, you can keep your eyes open. There are ways of practicing this with your eyes closed, but for now let's start with eyes open, having a soft gaze. In other words, you're not particularizing certain objects in the room, you're just taking in the full visual field. And now direct your gaze at some object in front of you and notice what the experience is like to perceive that object. Its color, form, and texture. And now point your attention at the ground in front of you and notice what you visually perceive. Notice your sense of looking out from behind your eyes and perceiving color and form. And now, not with your eyes, but with your mental attention, point your spotlight of your attention onto the surface covering your hands and notice what you perceive there. And now point that same focus of attention back at your head and notice what you perceive there. You may get the sense that from your first-person vantage point, where your head is supposed to be, you don't actually see yourself, but instead experience a sense of being that you cannot see and is without form. Now, if your critical mind comes in and says, well, yeah, of course I can't see my head, we don't want to analyze and question this. We are just looking to connect with the sense we get when we direct the source and location of our focused attention onto itself. It's recognizing that there's just this field of awareness, and even the feeling of having a head is appearing within your field of conscious awareness. So another way to do this is just imagine for a moment that you don't have a head. So from your toes and all the way up to your neck is just your body. And from your neck and beyond is just the world, just a massive, boundless field of awareness. See if you can first notice and then rest in this open and centerless awareness. This can seem ridiculous at first, but try not to overthink it. Try not to think at all. Just notice the experience. It's the easiest way to kind of get a glimpse of the selfless way before your conceptual mind kicks in and starts to analyze again. You just first notice that there's this whole world out there, and then point the spotlight of attention back and direct your awareness towards the looker. You can direct your awareness outwards, and then in an instant just direct it back onto itself. Direct the gaze of the looker back onto itself, and notice what you experience. And see if you can rest in that experience. Our attention is a spotlight that we can direct to all of the areas of awareness, such as what we can hear, feel, taste, touch, see. Everything that is in the outer world, but also within our own inner world, to thoughts and emotions. We often have this sense that the I that we think of as ourselves, the person behind your eyes, is behind this spotlight of attention and able to move the spotlight across all of these different areas of awareness. But what do we perceive when we turn that spotlight onto itself? Do we see ourselves as the one directing the spotlight? Do you see your head and face? Where is the one that is noticing? And upon not finding the looker, rest in that for a moment. Finally, let's try one more experiment here. So direct your gaze out into the world in front of you, and make it a soft gaze, taking in the full room or outdoors in front of you. And now look for the boundary between where it feels like you are behind your eyes somewhere and the outside world. Where do you stop and the outside world begin? You might notice that such a clear-cut border is unfindable upon closer inspection. The inner-outer duality that's constructed by our brain collapses into a single field of unbounded and serene awareness. All right, so we can transition out of the meditation, but really, you can do this at any moment throughout your day-to-day life. It's a great technique for loosening the grip of the craving mind when it's shrink-wrapped around a thought or a negative story in your head, or thinking about the future or the past. You can notice that you are hooked into and caught up in thoughts, and then just direct your attention to your direct, here and now experience in the spacious awareness that's there all the time and always accessible to you